Welcome back to Testing and Tech here on Vital MX. As always, this feature is brought to you by our friends at Yamaha Motor USA. And what do we talk about here on Testing and Tech? This is a fairly newer show for us. We're going to go through a range of product testing topics, a range of tech that we see around the sport, new bike stuff, just anything along those lines. There's always room to talk about what is new on the bikes and anything associated to them. As always, I'm your host, Michael Lindsay, and my co-host is Steven Two Cars and a Key Tokarski.
That's the easy
Steven
way of thinking
Tokarski,
of it.
our product editor at large, and I am your content director here at Vital MX. And yeah, let's get into it. We've got 4 topics for today, and the first one is one that's a little near and dear to my heart in terms of memories of getting in the industry, and that has a lot to do with air forks. Because when I first got as we joked about in the last episode about failed racing, when I realized I was extremely a failed racer, I worked at a track for a little bit. I actually worked at Paris Raceway when I was like 16, 17.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I worked at the track for like a year and a half.
Wow.
A lot of people, it's funny, people still come up to me and remember me sitting in the booth with a broken leg for like 3 months. I also dislocated my shoulder while on crutches.
What did you do there?
Just like the office and the paperwork stuff and the sign-in booth stuff. Okay. So most tracks have a booth girl. I was a booth boy, apparently.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. It was an awesome job, honestly, because we were there, take example, like a Tuesday, I'd get there at like 7:30 a.m. and we'd be there till like 9 or 10 at night. And during the 2-hour break in the middle while they were re-prepping the track for the night session, I had a little TV and an Xbox I'd bring with me, and I'd play like MX vs. ATV in the booth when I had nothing to do for like 2 hours. I still got paid for those 2 hours, shockingly, too.
It's not a bad thing to get paid for.
No, not bad. But getting back on topic, after that, I went to work at Enzo Racing. Ross Maina became a good close friend of mine and like a mentor. And
Such good suspension.
Just good dude in general. Like I could sit here and listen to Ross tell stories for hours on end. Great storyteller. Dude's been all over the world, knows everybody in the sport, in the industry, has worked with the best. But by the time I ended up starting to work with him, I think it was around the end of, somewhere around 2011. And into 2012, like the KYB PSF1 air fork started to make its way into the final testing stages for like, I think it was Kawasaki and Honda were adopting it first. But then where we had a lot of experience other than customers bringing, because Ross, the KYB guy, other than them bringing them in, is Star Racing actually ended up running it. Ross put a lot of development into that project. And when we got to, I think Supercross in 2013, that off season in 2012, they tested with Star quite a bit. So this is still like Star on the carved era bike. So the whole team ended up, I think the whole team chose it for Supercross, or pretty darn near. So we're talking, I'm trying to think 2013, we're talking about like a Cunningham. This is right about like the emergence of Webb, and then J-Mart just coming into play, things like that.
You're giving me flashbacks of riding a carbureted 250F on Supercross 2011, 2012, because I did Monster Cup.
Scary times.
I did the first 2 years of Monster Cup, and I just remember hitting the pockets of rhythm section, just bull, and
bull.
just... All right, hey, sorry, bringing back deadly flashbacks.
That's something kids today will never have to worry about in Supercross. No. They can just land wide open in the rev limiter and seat bounce, and nothing usually happens. They didn't have the feeling of listening to the thing gurgle and having to land at just the right throttle, no matter how good it was, jetted, having to land just the right RPM to seat bounce something.
And the 4-strokes weren't even that bad. I can't imagine 2-stroke days. Those dudes were gnarly.
I know. I still flash back to... I'm trying to think if it was 06 or 07 when Reed had the big bog when he seat bounced at Supercross and went to the hospital. Yeah. I don't know if that was St. Louis or Indy, but the one he famously went to the hospital, missed qualifying, and came back for the night show, and he beat himself up. But the same thing, he went to seat bounce and just gurgled.
Or that famous video, Stewart.
Oh, on the quad. Yes, the 2-stroke where he just frames it and steps off the bike.
Goodness. Just walks away like a stud.
Yeah. The first time I rode an 08, like everybody always wants to rebuild an 08 Honda. I rode one again like 2 years ago, and it was pretty good, but still dealing with the gurgles and stuff, and just like, you get spoiled on an FI bike being able to just jump 20 feet to flat off everything. Like, doesn't matter where you land, you're good. Yeah. But, so air forks, they ended up on them, and infamously Star has changed a little bit over the years. Like right now in outdoors, they're mostly running spring, but they have historically stayed air. After that era, you had the Showa. You had Showa go to a separate function spring fork for about a year or two, and then they adopted it into an air fork. And then KTM followed it with a production version of a separate function air fork. So big difference there is like the KYB PSF1 had basically you were just replacing springs on each side, coil springs with like air. But both forks were still doing all the damping duties, compression, rebound, and had air springs in them. They actually have a small metal spring for a negative spring technically inside them. But then like the Showa and the WP were, hey, let's do the damping on one side, the compression rebound, and let's do the air spring on the other side. And the Showa ended up being pretty complicated. You had your positive, you had your negative chamber, you had an outer chamber. That fork honestly probably got the most rough comments, I'd say, even at a factory level, because you had guys like James and Reed on guys that there was always kind of back and forth with that one. The KYB hung in, the Showa went away. The WP came in as a production fork, and now where this topic comes up is it's being introduced or being brought in a lot more as a race fork now. Like I said, I could every year go around and go, oh, look, this guy's still on KYB PSF1, this guy's still on KYB PSF1, this team is. And then like 2 years ago, it was like, oh, Aaron Plessinger ran one on the KTM for outdoors. Well, yeah, he came from Star, like he's used to it.
He likes a choppered out bike.
Loves choppered out bikes, so
it
makes sense.
Yeah.
Now let's go this year. KTM group, particularly like MXGP, almost all their guys are on air fork, and their air fork is very close to the production unit. It is drastically close. It's basically, I would call it like you basically took it to a local tuner and just had them modify it. It's the basic production components for the most part, but you've got I think Hurlings is on it, like DeWolf's on it. I think the Coonen's on. I think there's only like one GP guy that might not be on it out of their main dudes. Maybe it's like a Damo or something. No, it's not a Damo. Maybe it's Everett. Somebody in that group isn't, but the majority of them are. So now on the US side, you have Ryder DeFrancesco's on it. Casey Cochran, I think, was on before he got hurt. RJ Hampshire switched to it second round of outdoors. Plessinger, again, has been on it. Juju has been on it. So I think that leaves in the KTM group on spring is like Malcolm and Tom Vial are still on a standard WP spring fork, and then Sexton and Barsha on the KYB hybrid. But where it comes back to is like there was all that negative initial with the air fork. Consumer wise, and it kind of drifted out. Why do people still use it? And I want to ask your opinion. I have my opinions, particularly in Supercross, but like we've done a bit of testing. We did a modified FC air fork on the KTM the last couple of weeks. You've spent a lot of time doing KYB stuff over the years, so I know you've sampled it plenty over the years.
Yeah, I think for the top level racers, they have they're pushing the bike harder, and it has more control mid to end stroke. It has a better bottoming resistance and more plush feeling down deep in the stroke. And I think the teams have a little more of adjustment with the air pressure that they can get throughout the fork as much. Whereas a spring fork feels a little softer. It might be a little better in light load situations or flat corners where you have less traction. But on these outdoor tracks, when they're deeper, bigger bumps, faster, tougher conditions, I think the air fork is a better package overall.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, it's always been easy to default when people come up to me and ask like, oh, why do you still see teams or riders on air forks? And Supercross, to me, it's a very straight and easy answer, because basically as the air ramps up, let's say it's a KYB PSF1, it starts at 32 PSI. By the time the fork is almost fully collapsed, the pressure has grown tremendously because you've reduced the volume so much. The control at the end of the stroke is insane. Like you can try to go like, say, aggressive with a spring fork on valving and have a good bottoming cone in it, but still that character at the end, that energy, it eventually either clanks, and when it does, I feel like the fork, because it has the coil bind, like the way it rebounds, the way it comes off that moment is different than an air fork. An air fork has such insane control to me when it goes all the way basically to the bottom of the stroke, when it's ramping up right before it G's out. So if you're in Supercross, you OJ a rhythm lane and you're landing deep in the pocket, especially in East Coast ones, rutted, and you have to commit to the next one, the air fork will take the hit and then almost just continue forward. Like it doesn't as often like kind of kick either way. That end stroke control is really, really good.
Yeah, it's that's where I think the faster guys feel it much more than, say, your average consumer who's not riding deeper in the stroke as much. And yeah, I've done some back-to-back with an air fork and spring fork, and you just can't get that comfort and control that an air fork does at end stroke.
And sure, but then
So smooth and plush. You don't feel like that metal to metal feeling at bottoming, and it's lighter weight. So that's a big thing for racers, you know.
yeah, I'm always surprised like like speed sensitivity, because that's the thing. Spring, it's like when the difference between bottoming, in my opinion, that's like, I don't know, is one big hit versus repeated hit. Like, it's really hard to get a spring fork to have the same control at the end of the stroke without having like harsh points. Like you said, air force feels so progressive towards the end. It ramps up just like you think in your head you want it to, just right before it hits. With a spring fork, you might feel like almost like stuttering or little shelves along the way or something.
Yeah, you're landing on some type of little air cloud, you know.
Literally.
Yeah.
But then the surprise though is, like I said, so you take like a star who, okay, like they did it last year, and they've jumped around a little bit this over the years. They'll have some guys that just can't make it work outdoors, and they'll do a little bit of spring fork outdoors, and they'll kind of go back. They're hardcore this year, spring fork outdoor. Like the only
Besides
person,
J-Mart. Didn't he run air fork at Millville?
at Millville, yes, he went like old school throwback on his settings.
Well, he got an old spring off his championship bike.
Shock spring
Which
from
is
10 years
awesome.
ago. Ran air forks. I think he's the only guy in the group on outdoors. I know Hayden's on spring. We'll have to check Nate's bike at spring. We have a group of guys coming back with like Anstey Davies and a bunch of them. We'll see. But the group that has been racing has been on spring forks. So that, like, to some people that makes sense. Like, okay, what you said, hey, you have all that control and comfort at the end of the stroke. The spring fork usually has that control and comfort feeling at the beginning of the stroke.
Correct.
But then, like I said, you have the KTM group doing almost the opposite. More of the guys were on spring and Supercross, and more on air outdoors. How much do you think is difference in the system, or how far have they just come? Like I said the other day, we were messing around with one of the KTMs with the production air fork we've had redone.
Yeah, I think the air forks come a long way. They're getting rid of that crust feeling at the beginning stroke where it's kind of harsh. It just doesn't want to settle into the light load situation. So I think once they've figured that out more to where it's a more progressive damping feel overall versus the spring fork, which is very good beginning to mid stroke, but not as comfortable in the end stroke.
Yeah. Your personal, like you're building any bike in the range, what we're talking about. Actually, let me rephrase this. It might be bike sensitive. You yourself, you're building whatever 450 you want to go ride full time for the year. If you had the option between the two, which would you pick personally, and why? And under what circumstance would you pick the other?
That's tough because some air forks I've ridden lately, I really enjoy the end stroke performance and comfort of it, but I still think I would choose a spring fork right now just because I really liked a good cornering performing bike and easy settling into area one. I like to have some movement on beginning stroke into some ruts and into a corner and maybe a flat corner where I can turn better, especially out here in California where in the summer it gets baked. There's no ruts. It doesn't get that deep. So I personally would choose the spring fork, and just the, yes, you do have more adjustment with the air pressure, but you have to check it more often, where sometimes I can be lazy that way. And I do like to tune stuff a lot, but I don't like to have to check my air pressure throughout the day.
Yeah. And that's, I know, something else, like between the systems. I guess I could do a whole, I think we'll do it in another episode. I'm going to actually do a subject where we'll talk about all the different systems that are available, because like some people might hear me and go, oh, well, some guys are on spring forks or on hybrids. Hybrids are very thin and few. We're talking about Yamaha has access to an LSF KYB hybrid fork. Outdoors, Webb and Tomac are actually on legit PSF1 works forks.
We have, they pushed for that one year, and we tried a hybrid a lot, and it was good, but it just didn't match the comfort feeling you get out of the spring fork, especially for consumers.
Yeah, so I think the only one on the hybrid right now is technically J-Coupe, and then opposite end of the spectrum, you have like Showa, all the PC guys, and I think the HRC 250 guys they have air assist, which is you have a spring fork and you're just controlling a little bit of the PSI that's in it, which can add to end stroke character. But you gotta be really careful, because all you're basically doing, is most people know, is like your fork can feel harsh before you've bled it, when it heats up a little bit. That's basically what an air assist fork is. You're controlling that when you bleed the fork and hear it, it's like, okay, there might have been 2 psi in there. They're actually forcefully doing that to their fork, and then you kind of have to have the setting to go with it a little bit just to make up for it. But obviously, like I remember I ran religiously a PSF1 fork for probably 5 years. Ross built me, so I kept taking from Cowie to Cowie to Cowie for test bikes for a while. However, this is a funny one because it depends what I'm doing. All the stuff we do in media, I've defaulted to more of a neutral. I try to ride more of a neutral bike than I did when I was racing, because I definitely like, personally, if you give me a bike and I'm allowed to just deal with it for a long period of time and I don't care, that bike turns into this. And the bars come way back because I have short little stubby arms, and the cockpit gets really weird, and the bike turns into a chopper, and I just don't care.
What do you mean by neutral? Explain
I try
that.
to run more of what I think is a level bike for a consumer. More of a bike that works off both front and rear steering, that takes both input, not too far one way, not too far there. I try to ride a bike for testing that is...
So a more level bike.
Yeah, just a more level, naturally balanced bike. I try to fit right in the middle. I try to basically have a bike that front inputs and rear inputs equally, and I try to ride that way, and I try to have a very neutral cockpit when I'm testing, so I don't put too much of my personal disposition in it. Now, if it was my personal disposition, all the bikes would be choppers, and all the bikes would have the bars really far back.
See, that's where I think some of the racers choose the air fork and stuff, because they're very picky when it comes to, oh, I need the front end high, or or Tomac, he wants the rear end really high. Yeah. And so maybe that's
it's interesting with that, because he runs such a high rear end, it puts a lot of pressure on the fork in situations. So I think that's what's funny, is if you go really aggressive one way or the other, you could make the argument for the air fork. If you like a chopper bike, that means you probably don't care that the fork rides height in general. Yeah. So argument, you could run the air fork. Now, if you run a really high rear end, you could argue, an air fork could get you past the point of where you have so much pressure all the time on the front end, you're always fighting fork like smoothness, but also not just overloading the front end all the time.
Yeah, it's your preference of how you like, what you like to see in your performance. Do you want to be a good cornering rider, or do you want more stability? So if you want more stability, you'll chopper it out, but if you want better cornering performance, you maybe make it a little higher in the rear.
Oh, that's our air fork topic for the day. Topic 2. What is our topic 2 today, Stevie?
Is it new changes or the bike? Or what were we saying?
Left my note phone over there. I could cut this part because I'm stupid.
It was the new changes to the bike.
No, what first would you do to a bike?
Oh, yeah.
So actually, speaking of what you would do, like on my part of like if I had a bike and I just was going off of not having to do it, what I think is neutral for feedback, what would you first do to your own motorcycle, throwing your pure personal preference in this? And I have buddies over the years I've run into that all do different things. I have buddies that are really tall, that their default before they do anything to their bike is pegs and seats, no matter what, or bar mounts or whatever. I know
you don't need that.
No, I do not. I have the I have the legs of Jeremy and Alex Martin.
I don't either. I got short legs.
Yeah, stubby. As my girlfriend always jokes, I have stubby legs.
It makes something else look bigger, though. So
Right. But so some guys do that. Some guys swear by, before they ever even ride the motorcycle, they send the suspension out. Some guys swear by, I gotta have an exhaust. So like, for you personally, what's your default, and is it the same or does it change per motorcycle?
It changes per motorcycle for sure. So like the YZ, the first thing I wouldn't do is change the suspension. I had so many people over the years say, "Oh, I got a brand new YZ," and then I just sent it out to suspension first. Didn't even ride stock suspension, and then they're like, "Oh, my suspension sucks," and I'm like, "Well, did you even try the stock setting or clicking it around?" Some people don't even mess with their clickers before going through to a suspension change. And I feel like that's a big thing for some people, is they feel like they need suspension right away. And that's like the number one thing, when the companies spend so many hours and days and different riders nailing a specific setting. And yes, it's not made for everyone, but there's so many, it's a wide range of people that we have testing. And I think that's why YZ has done really good over the years. Is Travis Preston is 6'4", 200-pound monster, and he rides over the front of the bar like a gorilla. And then you had me, who was 170, 175, right in the middle. And then we had Butler, who was our boss, is 140 pounds. So we had a wide range of weight, rider skill, that would make, if we were all happy with the setting, then we knew we were kind of in the ballpark of where you wanted to be.
Yeah.
But I would do suspension on some bikes first. But for me personally, I would more like to see an ECU change on a lot of the bikes. Throw a Vortex on there to get me some more power, especially on a 250F. So it depends. It's a wide range, you know, if we're talking 250, 450. But mostly I would either do an engine change, exhaust, ECU, or suspension. A big thing for me is chassis rigidity balance on a bike. So I would maybe go to some engine mounts or the new race cups, you know, something like that, to triple clamps. Yeah, it varies though.
Yeah. I think my default's like dramatically all over the place. And what I found funny is like, I get at the end of the day, 450s particularly, I can't argue at a certain point suspension gets done fairly early because they are a little harder to set up. I laugh those. You jump on even being way too big for a 125, you jump on like a 2-stroke and you realize how good the suspension works on them in general. Like, I know this could be stiffer, but I'm like, this is actually fine. I'm just going to keep riding the bike. I agree with you. Like most bikes, I actually tend to lean towards a couple things because some manufacturers have done some odder decisions on tires. And nothing against Sans tires, but it's like if I'm always going to run, if I'm like, for instance, we do the mass majority of our testing on Dunlop, it is the most popular tire in the market. And if it's on either a really old spec tire or a weird rear size tire or something like that, I would immediately change. Like, okay, I want to know how the bike works with, no matter what I do to the motorcycle, there's one thing that connects me and the motorcycle to the ground, and that's the tire. So some bikes, that is one of my defaults. Like, okay, I want to know how the bike works with what I'm used to on it. Before I start getting too far with my default.
Well, now you say that, I think I would go scoop tire on every bike. After my comparison test and riding it more often, I think I might throw a scoop tire on almost every bike now.
Stevie's big scoop tire guy. He loves that 2 seconds a lap.
I really enjoyed it, and I threw that on the YZ125 for the 2-stroke nationals, and even the last moto, Marias changed back to a standard tire, and I was like, nope, I'm sticking with the scoop.
You're like every dude at the national right now.
I was like,
scoop or die.
Yeah.
Scoop or death. So I think some of the tangibles like that because I do get some people's case, like if like we rode the other day the Beta 300, and I really enjoyed a lot of things about the bike, except for we said straight for the test, the bars were horrendous. They basically were like a straight pipe.
They were an inch and a half wider than the KTM.
Yeah. So some stuff like that, the tangibles, like I'm not big on like, oh, I have to have my handlebar bend on it, but as long as like, okay, there's certain things I want to be in the ballpark before I start modifying the bike. Okay, if like I said, if the tire choice is really different than what I'm used to, or it's a different size, let's get what I think is normal in there so I have a better base opinion. Is the control so weird that it's making something odd for me? Okay, I think I'll do that just to get a base opinion. And then, I kind of identify, okay, if it's a 450, could the power be more manageable for me in a way? Whether does it need to be more or less? ECU-wise, 250, is there a way to get some more out of it? Because that will affect how things work. And then I definitely will ride before I turn in suspension. It's funny is when I used to test all the time, I didn't do this until more recently, is how often I will just be like, you know what? I just want to know how good or bad something could be. Even if I don't really have I'm not having a direction opinion, it's just go, you know what, I'm going to go like 6 clicks this way or 6 clicks the other way. I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
How does the whole bike react if the fork gets a lot stiffer or a lot softer? Like, does it affect something else in the bike I'm not aware of? Shock, same thing, like just do a bunch of random stuff like that. So also if I do turn in the suspension, instead of just telling the guys, because I know plenty of guys, they'll drop off their suspension ride to get a bike, and the only thing they can write on the notepad is, because maybe they either didn't ride or ride it for 30 minutes, it just says, I'm heavier or lighter.
Yeah, weight and skill.
Yeah. You ask them, what do you think? And usually they're like, maybe it could be a little plusher or something, but maybe they don't know. Again, they say plusher, maybe this stuff's really soft, and they just don't know it because they didn't just wing it either
I
direction.
Learned that in my testing time, that sometimes I wanted a more comfort out of a fork or a shock, and I thought, oh, we need to go softer, and we went stiffer, and I actually gained more comfort and performance because I was deeper in the stroke. I needed to have more hold up, and then I started realizing, okay, maybe not always going softer adds to more comfort.
Yeah.
And then there's guys that have clickers that either don't do their clickers at all, or they'll be like, oh yeah, my clicker, my front fork's all the way in. And I'm like, no, you can't have, it just doesn't function right when you're completely tight or completely open.
Yeah, completely tight, especially,
Yeah.
especially degrades oil and stuff. That's actually funny because that's our fourth and final topic we picked for the day was stuff that guys do as a default too often to suspension changes, because I run into this all the time, and I think that one is kind of a funny one because there's particularly one thing I'm going to rant about that I run into not everybody, the vast majority of people that come up to me at track have an issue do as their default to a feeling, and it's almost always the wrong thing. So we will get to that one. Actually, before we go to topic 3, because topic 3 involves some new YZs, and it's a perfect segue for our sponsor,
Blue Crew,
Yamaha Motor USA. Who better to present the testing and tech podcast here than a brand that is synonymous with tech? I'm talking about the brand that actually made it possible for you to modify your dirt bike from your phone. Yes, if you have a Blue Crew, you can whip out the app, you can jump in the Power Tuner app, you can change the ignition timing, the fuel mapping, left, right, up, down, center, all the beautiful little parts of the graph.
And there's a lot of maintenance.
And a lot of maintenance in there. But you can make your bike smoother, you can make it hit harder, you can give it more engine braking, you can give it less, and you can have all the fun in the world learning all about little mapping and making yourself feel like the Chad Bronner, Jamie Ellis's of the mapping world off your little phone.
And they have a lap timer in there now.
And they have a lap timer,
which is very cool.
No, but again, Yamaha, more brands adopt this, but Yamaha is still the most forefront in this area with the most options possible. And that brings us into talking about the new Yamaha YZ450, which I would say is the most, outside of one bike we mentioned here, there's some brand new existing bikes, but of existing bikes, the 2026 Yamaha YZ450F is actually the most changed and updated motorcycle this year. It's technically a mid-gen refresh bike. It's not an all new, but it has, I would argue, like I look at some of the list of changes and it's almost as much as like the last new Honda 450, technically speaking.
Yes, very similar.
Because and you were on, so whatever our main list, like there is some visuals on the plastic new front number plate, front fender, side plates, yes. But the chassis has been a huge focus on.
Yes, the chassis was the cradle has a new design and just trying to chase that 22 comfort feeling. So I think that's the biggest change to this bike. But it's almost evenly because now they have new intake design, intake port design, and new exhausts to kind of mellow this machine out a little bit, as it is the fastest bike in the class, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think it could use a little less power overall for the average consumer.
And a lot of that comes from Yamaha. Well, AMA, this is actually a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of controversy on the pro side. So AMA was supposed to jump to the 109 max RPM test next year. The GP guys are on it. I think we're on 114 currently. So this YZ450 has that updated system for that. I believe, even though I said the KTMs aren't changing, KTM has been developing theirs. I think theirs is coming this year or the year after. They've been some of the OEMs really heavy on it. I think Triumph kind of went that direction out of the box in general. And Ducati had told us the same. They because they were going to deliver at that time.
And I believe Cowie is already
Cowie is close. Even though they updated their airbox, it does not meet it. So this bike meets that 109 standard. The AMA is actually they've decided to push it off one year, which I don't terribly disagree with, actually, because talking to them, like, right now there's 250B teams that can't even get through the current sound limit, and there's not a lot, like I said, where Yamaha is one of the only OEMs that's really jumping on it a little bit with the incoming, like a Triumph. Like, if you're a privateer next year on a Cowie, if you're a privateer on like a Honda, a couple of those still have another year out on theirs, you're kind of hosed.
I remember in my short stint in Supercross, I had a tough time passing sound, so we would put towels in the airbox. My mechanic from Vance and Hines Day, Alan Olson, who was Chad Reed's mechanic in 2006, he would hold the bike where the little cutout and the side number plate was to kind of maybe get a little less sound. But yeah, as a privateer, it was stressful. Yeah.
So, cool part, if you are going to race a Yamaha YZ450, you're passing with flying colors next year and the year after. And yes, I agree with you. I'm very curious to see how getting a little more comfort out of the bike and a little bit maybe like smoother, just easier power delivery because of sound items is going to help. Plus, also nicer to the ears. would be a little bit nicer. If you're a big rever, the sound of the Yamaha definitely is a little gnarly.
Yes, and it is drastically different hearing them on the track. Just the exhaust noise and the intake noise. Yes, you can hear it, but it's when we're during testing, we're like, damn, that thing is quiet as it comes by.
So that's our big one. There's also, before we go on to another OEM, there are some more changes from Yamaha. YZ125 is updating this year.
Yes, some minor changes. So when the bike got a major overhaul in 2022, the carburetor setting was very sensitive. So it used to have very good track toughness in the previous years before that, 21 and stuff, where you could go to a lot of different elevations and track conditions and not have to adjust much on your carburetor. So the 22 was a little more sensitive, so they've now updated intake, and the intake boot is updated. It has revised carburetor and CDI settings, and just makes more consistent performance in various conditions.
And then move on from that, all new, of course, this year is the Ducati, the Desmo 450, which we will have, I double checked yesterday, a little bit longer. I think we got about 4 to 5 weeks till we have it in our hands here in the States. So that's just an all new product in general. Triumph delivered their 450 early in the year, but they do have an update on their side with the 250. They're actually entering their third year with the 250, which seems weird because the 250, the first year I almost joke is like a half year. It came out so late. Like the 24 and 25 for them kind of bleeds together for me. So
even though they did do some small changes to the 25.
Yeah, durability. So 26 now, though, there is actually, I'd say 24, 25 was just fixing some little gremlins, where 26, they actually have a few performance updates.
Yeah, they have an all new airbox and silencer, new ECU mapping, updated suspension settings, and an all new Exedy clutch?
Exedy, I think.
Exedy.
Yeah, it's a British brand. So they're really, I think it's kind of cool. It's like KTM, they're pretty open with who their suppliers are for transmission components, their rod, their piston. Exedy is, a clutch brand in British motorsports.
And like we found out doing that parts article, they have some great prices for their bikes.
They do.
So that will be very interesting, to test that bike out.
Yes,
as it's already pretty damn good.
Pretty good. So a little bit better on engine, a little bit better performance, a little bit better suspension. Like it can really, especially with nothing else really changing in the 250 class, it could really also help them come shootout time.
I picked a great year to start shootouts with, 8 bikes or so coming into the...
Oh my goodness, so many motorcycles.
It's going to be awesome. I love it.
Help.
I love it.
Help. And then the last one, there's 2 more bikes to really talk about that they're one potential change, one new, but they're still kind of shrouded in secrecy, is what Kawasaki has up their sleeve. So nothing really for the traditional, the KX450, the KX250. We've been talking about it since early Supercross. Like, it's a pretty well-known secret. There is a KX300 coming.
They threw a big teaser out and then just crickets.
They did say it was going. I think they went maybe a little too early on that. They definitely left
maybe throw a second teaser out, like the Triumph, to show us an air box or something.
Just more noise. That's all we need. Probably some form of a direct injector, fuel injected 300 of some sort. Kind of interesting.
Keep the card, please, Cowie.
I know. Interesting one for them because they're pushing more and more into GNCC. So it's really a perfect model for them for 2-stroke. It's like, how many guys are really going out and buying a 250 2-stroke? Okay, if a guy's in the 2-stroke kick and wants to go ride the track, the difference between telling them there's a 250 or 300 available, they're already probably not racing it. So it's like, F it, I'll get the 300. But then the 300 comes into play because if Cowie brings out a 300 motocross bike, they're definitely going to bring out a off-road platform version of it at some point.
And you have the vet guys who have the money in their pockets and they prefer a 300 because it's easier to ride than a 250.
Yeah. So that is coming. I'm going to take a shot in the dark. I thought I remember hearing some a few months ago. I don't think we'll see more on it till October or November. There is a second supposedly 2-stroke model coming for Cowie, and we've gotten very conflicting answers on this. One person inside told me it's a heavily updated KX85, and then there's a rumor been flown around it's like a 150, 125 2-stroke. Because they still have the KX85 is falling way behind, and they're still pushing with Team Green in the amateur class. There's a part of me that really leans towards it's probably going to be the 85 Super Mini platform. I would think.
It should be because all the bikes are falling behind versus the KTMs. The KTM, the Austrian group.
In the 85 class,
because That is a really good 85. I've done some riding on that versus the YZ, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be a big one, because Cowie's still, like, especially with the Team Green Motto, like, they still have the KX65, but they've really, like, that thing is just, it exists, it's there. That's about all I can say for it. So that's the end of that one. On to our last topic for the day. So the YT's near one is, we're going to talk about things that people either, in my opinion, change too often on their bike as their default go-to, like, my bike doesn't feel right, I'm going to adjust this. And then we'll also talk about things that maybe people overlook because they're very stuck in their ways. I have friends that do this, that they get a bike, and because it does a certain thing on the track, they think they know the fix, but they go to the same default. And my example for this is the amount of people that have come up to me at a track, had me try their bike, and some people I would say, like, they're people I've ridden with for years I consider decently knowledgeable, and they end up at this default is, my bike kicks off jump faces, I'm going to slow the rebound down because that's why my bike kicks. Like, guys, they hit really abrupt jump faces and they endo. They always come out and go, oh, my bike kicks, I'm going to slow down the rebound. It does, in a sense, dull the reaction a little bit, but you got to come up with the reason of why is it actually kicking in the first place, and the vast majority of the time is it is blowing through the stroke and then it's hitting, and then you're getting that unload of energy because you've blown all the way through the stroke, it's packed out, and then it finally, the energy comes back. The amount of guys that'll come to me and be like, oh, I just keep slowing, I'll go check, because they've had it happen one time. They did it 1 or 2 clicks. 2 months later, it happened. They did it 1 or 2 clicks. Another month later, all of a sudden, their rebound's almost fully closed off on their shock, and they've just, because that's been the default. Go tighten up that high speed a little bit, all of a sudden, hey, wait, the shock doesn't blow through the stroke on the jump face, and it doesn't kick anymore. It goes through halfway really nice and just carries up the face instead of through and then endoing. So that's like, guys, if your bike is kicking off jump faces all the time, please reconsider slowing down your rebound. Most of the time, that is not the fix.
Yeah, and sometimes it's too stiff, and it's kicking because it's not blowing through the stroke enough.
It's not even absorbing.
And opening the rebound will help it get through the bottom of the stroke and absorb that little less where it is kicking you.
Yeah. Because you've done so much with all this in media working for Yamaha. So even the same thing, guys, I would say that spend a decent amount of time on bikes playing with clickers. I feel like everybody's guilty of this at some level. They have their default changes, and sometimes they don't move beyond their default changes. What's one that you run into that guys change all the time that maybe isn't necessarily fixing the problem?
I would have to go fork height. They think before even touching a clicker, they feel like I need to go flush with the forks or move them down. They come right in and, the front feels a little high, so let's go 5 mil on the fork, which is a huge change. And instead of trying to get a little more feel from the fork with a clicker, they just are closed off from that, and they need to adjust their fork height right away, or sag, where they feel like it's either low or high, and then they just go straight to, we need to go 5 mil higher or 5 mil lower, instead of trying to do a little high speed, which will help. And in most of their situations, it is a higher speed or faster speed or higher load situation. And I think they just need to try clicking stuff around and then going both ways to see, understanding what it feels like, softer, stiffer, and then they can really, if that doesn't work after all, then they can go to, a fork height.
Yeah. I think that's their big one, because I know also people that are unsure tend to believe they're changed too much. Like, same thing, guys come up in a track like, what should I do? And especially if their feedback, if I can tell by listening to them, they're not really even sure what's going on or how to explain it, which happens. Like, there's times I get stuck. I try something like, man, I don't really exactly know what the problem is here. I know I'm not happy with it. Yeah. And then that's where I'll do the F this, I'm going to learn what the problem actually is. If I think I kind of know the area, let's say I'm just dealing with something with the fork, I'm like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go 5 clicks one way on the compression, write it down so you remember. So then technically, this sounds really gnarly, is go 10 clicks the other direction, the 5 plus 5 back the other way, and just be like, what does it feel like way softer or way stiffer than I'm at now? Does it cure my problem? Does it make it worse? And if I overshoot it, what does it affect somewhere else? Just to kind of get a direction, because you can always dial it back.
Yeah, I've had someone tell me in the testing time that you're only as good as what you try. So if you have this closed mind where, oh no, I already know going stiffer is not going to help that, you're never going to learn more than what you already know. So being a little, and obviously don't go out and try to send it to where you kill yourself, but yeah, trying to do some wild changes so you can and learn and feel that. And then once you start understanding and being able to feel it more precise, then start doing smaller clicker changes and stuff like that.
Yeah, because how many times I've done like, if I'm needling down a decision, but how many times when I really don't know what I want, I've done one click and rode a lap, and I'm like, did that make it better or worse? Like, I'm almost convincing myself I did the right thing.
I had a lot of guys during shootouts and stuff, oh, we'll just do one click, which most guys can't feel.
Yeah.
And on some bikes, different bikes, one click is more than another bike, you know. So I would always maybe go 2 or 3 just so they can actually feel the change. They're like, oh yeah, really, one click? I'm like, yeah.
How, you ever blind test somebody if you've just completely given up on their feedback? You ever told somebody you've done a click?
No, I haven't done that because I just feel like that's not me trying. But I've had that happen with me before, like just to try to test you and see if you. Yeah. And it's better to say you don't feel anything at all rather than make something up, you know. Yeah.
No, I run into people who have done that, and I always tell people the same thing, like, just be honest. Like, if you don't feel anything, that's a completely acceptable answer. What's worse is drumming up something and sending us down the wrong direction. Like, if it didn't, I've also run into this as well, is changing something again. Just sometimes you don't actually know what the problem is, and you change the wrong thing. Is I've changed something, come back, go, well, that didn't affect anything that I wanted it to affect, but I think I somehow made this way over here worse. I don't know how.
Yeah, you know, it's anything you change is going to affect another thing, and then you might have to go down that road. The one thing I'm saying that is TP, we were at the shop one day, and he's like, oh, try these 2 maps, but they're very similar, so you're going to have to really focus on one and then go the other one and see if you could tell a difference. So at Yamaha, they have a big baseball field out in the backyard, which we used to just terrorize and do a lot of testing out there. A lot of stoppies out there as well. Nice. So I go out there, do like 5 runs on the one map. I'm like, okay, I got a good feeling for this. Change it to the other map, and he just put it like as bad as it could be, and it's just like, I'm just like, I come back just shaking my head like, TP. He's like, could you feel anything? Could you tell a difference? I'm like, yes. If I don't, fire me, please.
Oh my goodness. The other one I would say, like, other than the high speed and the rebound one too, is a little bit with, I say it is for some reason, this is my personal opinion, I think most people, because high and low speed on a shock is scary or hard to understand, they do a rebound change to their shock because that's easier to understand. On a fork, a lot of people do their compression and they never really understand what rebound will do on the front end healthy. I think rebound on shock's much more simple to understand for guys, especially because when you're coming out of a corner, there's an acceleration chop. It's a lot easier to just go, oh, it's packing because it's slow, or it's really reactive because it's too fast and it's like jittering off of stuff. Where a lot of guys don't touch, I think they're opposite. They get to the fork, it's like, oh, compression's very easy to understand on a fork. It's either too stiff or too soft. Yeah. Still, people can get that wrong. It can feel harsh when it's too soft and they think it's stiff, but that's beside the point. But rebound, I think a lot of guys struggle on why to change their fork rebound. And actually, you're somebody I think that understands that really well when we go test, is you use fork rebound even to manipulate things that may not immediately come to people's mind. Yeah,
because I've learned from, especially from Ryan Corum at KYB, he's really smart with it, that when you go in or slow your rebound down, you're actually stiffening the fork a little bit. And then as you're opening it, you're going to get a more of a softer character. So I kind of, sometimes if I feel like I need a little stiffer setting, I will slow the rebound down instead of going to compression first. And that's, I think that's something a lot of people misunderstand or don't understand at all, is that there is another impact to it besides just how fast and how slow the rebound is. It will make it stiffer, softer, blow through the stroke more, give you more hold up. So I think that's where people kind of will just stick to compression. And then high speed, low speed on the rear is, as much as it's pretty, basic understanding. Like a low speed compression is for somewhat of a lower speed beginning stroke stuff, where high speed is more high load for square edge stuff.
Yeah.
And I think, but people are afraid to mess with high speed as much, where I feel like you get a bigger change out of your shock by doing a high speed change other than a compression and rebound.
Where I think a lot of people struggle with high and low speed is the term of it is, I'll see guys think that because the bike is they're moving very quickly, they think, oh, the suspension has to be moving quickly. But let's say, one of the ways I explain that, let's say you're going really, really fast, but there's a ski jump that's like this, and you hit it at 50 miles an hour, and you have a lot of forward momentum, so suspension only packs a little bit, comes up, and only has a little bit of movement when it lands, and it's a slow movement. I'm like, that's actually low speed, because the shaft speed, the movement of the suspension is slow. Where you can be going really slow, but if right out of a corner you have a really steep jump face that kind of pops you up and the landing's really steep and you just slam down, it's like, okay, you may not actually be traveling that fast, but think about how fast the suspension moved on that really abrupt jump face and that really abrupt landing. It blew right through the stroke because the shaft speed was really high. So I tell people when they're trying to side that is like, hey, don't think about how hard you're pushing in this section or how hard you think you're braking or accelerating. Try to picture the section, be like, how fast do you actually think the suspension is moving? Does it feel like it's going through really quick, or is it really mellow? Like how fast do you think the fork and shock are actually moving?
Yes.
That's one, because I get it. That's, you say high and low speed, and some people are just like, don't know what to do.
Yeah, or they think it's just high speed and low speed, which it can be in some situations, but like you just explained, it can be a slower speed section where you actually do have a higher speed shaft.
And it is really crazy how fast motocross suspension can move. So I kind of knew this, but a great example for it is I went on a tour of Öhlins years ago when I was in Sweden, and one of the guys there took me into their racing department. In the racing department suspension, you had motocross stuff, you had rallycross suspension, you had MotoGP suspension, and you had suspension off, not an F1 car because they use like a heave damper. It was like it was some form of an open wheel car, maybe an IndyCar stuff, but same thing. So the guy was explaining to me though, like, I looked at some of the MotoGP stuff, and don't get me wrong, it's super trick, but there's certain things about it that I thought were very basic, and some street bike forks I've seen are very basic. And it basically explained to me, like, yeah, Moto stuff is pretty advanced because it deals with such a wide range of shaft speed. So they had dynos in there. And they're like, yeah, the MotoGP dyno and the open car, wheel suspension car, whatever it was, it's like, okay, we're dynoing against like anywhere from half a meter per second to like 3 meters per second or something like that. And it's like, actually the one that associated the closest with moto was the rally car stuff. They're like, this stuff can reach shaft speeds of like 8 to 10, almost 12 meters per second, I think at max. Like 8 to 10 they were talking about was like high, but it can also only go half or 1 or 2 meters per second. But it has such a wider range it deals with. There's actually a big difference between low and high speed on motocross suspension. It is unique. We just think of ourselves as dumbass dirt bike riders most of the time. That's my running joke.
Which we are.
We are. That's my running joke for most things. Quote my Tom Vial story from post-race show last week about him having to have them jump start his bike and he kept shutting it off. I did joke with Carlos when we rode away. I said, that's a good thing most of these guys are good on a dirt bike because tell him not to shut off his dirt bike and kept turning it off. But the stuff we work with, we're kind of spoiled. I don't think a lot of people realize like actually how trick motocross suspension is in a sense. Like we put bikes, I mean, I think the other thing is fallback. We always think like, hey, motocross is a pretty gnarly sport. Yeah, it kind of is. The bike goes through hell. Yeah. The suspension goes through hell.
Yeah, I never saw a suspension work on a suspension dyno until I got to Yamaha. Yeah. And they have a full suspension dyno where they have a fork connected or a shock. Yeah. And seeing some of the tests of it just like up and down, you're just like, wow. Like there is insane movement.
Yeah, and what's crazy is most of your higher end suspension, whether it's even KYB or Showa or some of your guys have those dynos, some of those dynos still, I'd say the vast majority of them, like they don't reach the actual true speed of the suspension, but they can get close. Like I said, there's a dyno, like a good dyno is running 4 or 5 meters per second. It's like, well, in real life, it still can almost reach double that the suspension can. So it is again gnarly. If you ever get bored, people watching, if you ever get bored and you want to do this, take a GoPro or something and hook it to like the front cradle of your suspension pointing at a fork and just record it for a lap or two. You will enjoy watching. It will baffle your mind probably watching like the axle go up and down in the frame, the lower tubes, like how much it moves and how quickly it can move. It's kind of mind-boggling. It gives me a lot more respect for like how this stuff works. It also makes me sometimes just go, you know what? We're asking this to do the right thing in a lot of different situations. Maybe sometimes I should just suck it up and quit complaining so
Yeah,
much.
and you got to respect the manufacturers for building such good parts that can handle force and load like that the axle can take so much. And it's pretty remarkable what a motorcycle can do and how much confidence we have just to send it like dumbass dirt bikers. But that's probably
again, I watch like a Jet or Chase, some of the top guys in the world, what they do on a bike, and it's like it's amazing they do it, but I'm almost like that's a lot of trust. It's a lot of trust. So that's it for this episode of Testing and Tech. Like I said, we pick 3 or 4 topics every week. If you guys have a topic you would like us to talk about, something you want to learn about, something you want our opinion on, or something you just want to hear us blab on about, you can throw it in the comments section down below if you're here on YouTube. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast forum or audio podcast platform, you can also email it to me at mlindsay@vitalmx.com or hit the contact tab on Vital, or you can throw it in the forum or in the comments section on the website of these episodes. Again, I check them all before we do the next recording, so if you have something you want us to talk about, throw it in there and we will get to it.
And that's Lindsay with an A.
Yeah,
a lot of people might be
L-I-N-D-S-A-Y.
sending it to Lasey.
S-E-Y. It's going into a dark pit of despair. That's the email I give to people when I really don't want them to contact me. But yeah, if you got one, hand it to us. As always, thanks for watching. If you haven't, this is our second episode, so if you missed the first one, go back and watch it. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, thank you. And if you're listening on audio platform, I hope you're subscribing, because I'm wondering how you found this in the first place, because this is on our feed with our post-race content, our pre-race shows, all of our race interviews, and all the other good audio stuff we do, which is usually with a certain British person. Some people like his voice, some don't. Poor Lewis.
Big Lou.
Big Lou.
Walking around.
Just walking around the pits. Big Lou. As always, thank you for watching Testing and Tech, presented by Yamaha here on Vital MX.